I'm standing at Hollywood and Vine as the procession is moving past me. Just a few police officers at the corner and a lot of people moving westbound on Hollywood Boulevard. There's just a few police officers and a lot of horns and a lot of music. Feels like a party, but it's not. Hoping this thing stays peaceful and my little neighborhood makes it through this. Life at Ground Zero in the Wood of the Holly, folks. The police are diverting the cars south on Vine Street, but the marchers are moving west on Hollywood Boulevard, as I am, with my N95 mask and this chorus of humanity making its case against police brutality. A giant international selfie stop here for everybody and anyone walking past promoted storefronts, and everybody and every other person has an outstretched cell phone capturing this moment for this time and perhaps all time. Anyway, the marchers are ambling up ahead of me, and the helicopters are swirling overhead. This is life now in the Wood of the Holly under the sign, not in my television studio apartment, but actually elsewhere at the corner of Hollywood and Vine. And people from all corners of LA County and beyond have converged here, marching, I think, in a circle of some sort here on Hollywood Boulevard. I'm reminded of the Hollywood Parade when I was a kid. They still have it, but we used to sit in the office building, my dad's radio station, and watch as the floats of the celebrities and the horses marched by these very same streets on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. But this is a parade of an altogether different sort. Trying to make sense of what it all means. I'm not sure we'll know for a long time. You know, this is a leap year. It's 2020 is a leap year. It started with the Kobe's demise in a helicopter, and then the COVID, and now another incident, an episode of police brutality has lit the social tinder afire, and the streets are just filled with all manner of protesting. And I'm hoping, since it's a leap year, wouldn't it be nice, rather, if we could just leap forward, just take one big jump across the span of months that remain in 2020 and land quietly on January 20th at 12:01 p.m., 2021, with a brand new American president. That would be a supreme gift indeed. And hopefully this, I don't know what it is, this nightmare or this teaching moment, maybe it's a little bit of both, will yield a happier and better place, both health-wise and justice-wise. And nobody is looking more prescient right now than Colin Kaepernick, who made that first important gesture on the National Football League field. As I stand before what must be thousands of people stretching eastward, probably beyond even Western Avenue, which is, I don't know, maybe a mile to the east. Socially distant throng of humanity as it moves west again across Hollywood and Vine, and little to no police presence. There's a vehicle out there. I'm standing on Milton Berle's star, and that star has special meaning to me because I worked with Milton Berle. We were in the theater together. I'm standing on his star, his television star on the Walk of Fame, and I am an abstract and brief chronicler of this social moment, trying to make sense of what's going on here, trying to maintain my social distance, but to capture this moment, and hopefully it's a moment that will yield more justice in the future. Anyway, folks, from Milton Berle's star, I'm here at Hollywood and Vine.
And so, folks, as if by magic, I have skipped the light fantastic across both time and space and am now re-ensconced in the cozy confines of my television studio apartment, not too far from the justifiably madding crowd. And even now, from my safe spot in this, the wood of my holly, I can hear the ever-present backbeat, the thump, thump, thump of police helicopters maintaining their noisy vigil overhead. And so it goes. But I'm not here to throw deep thought bombs or wax philosophical. I'll leave that to the folks that are qualified, like your online yoga instructor. But still, the present moment demands that we take a look backwards and see the patterns. Peer back through the tunnel of time to get a better look at where we are now. And like so many other insurrections, this one started with a spark. Think Florence and Normandy in 92, or Watts in 65, or outside a convenience store in Ferguson, Missouri just a few years ago. And this time it happened on a sidewalk somewhere in the wilds of white people land. By that I mean up there in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's where they make cheese and beer and really good brats, and where Bud Grant and his Minnesota Vikings used to beat the Rams every year in the NFL playoffs. Anyway, up there in the WPL, some goofball white cop lost it. All right, no. Let me correct myself. He didn't lose it because he never really had it. By that I mean he never had any common sense or compassion. Anyway, the goofball white cop anointed himself judge, jury, and executioner and dispatched Mr. George Floyd into martyrdom. Because know this, friends, handcuff a person, then place your knee and the full weight of your body on that person's neck for 5 minutes, and that person, black or white or yellow, will expire sure as the sun will set. And the crime for which Mr. Floyd paid with his life was that he was a black man in America. And before you could say Rodney King, the streets of America and la erupted once again. And as I watch these images in person and across our TVs and cell phones, I think it's important to do a little historical review, because the trauma of this moment didn't just spontaneously appear out of nowhere. No. History reminds us that our first police and sheriffs and militias and guardsmen and lynch mobs, for that matter, were not established to help kittens out of trees in lily-white suburban neighborhoods. No. Our first police forces and sheriffs and militias and guardsmen and lynch mobs were established to suppress domestic rebellion, especially slave rebellions. Police and their posses were assembled, financed, and trained to secure the sanctity of private property. And I'm not talking storefronts or jewelry stores or Patagonia outlets. Nope. The private property I'm talking about is human private property. You know, slaves, black folks who were kidnapped and imported against their will to America to pick sugar and cotton and fold clothes and clean houses and raise white children, and when needed, which was often, to provide sexual relief to their white owners. Those police and sheriffs and militias were assembled, trained, and financed for one primary purpose, and that was to suppress any rebellion of the enslaved and to capture any who chose to escape the killing lash of bondage. So when you see the crazy images of broken storefronts and blazing police precincts, remember, if you can, the history, because that history is the base of the first world pyramid that we are standing on. And it is a very big pyramid. Now, that is not to say that the injustice and institutionalized violence of the past justifies the destruction we now see, but it should provide context and understanding. And so, with all the compassion and understanding that I can muster from the bottom of my white privileged heart, I have a message to my younger brothers and sisters, you young folks who are breaking into the Patagonia and REI stores, you discontented few who are crashing through the windows into the Urban Outfitters and Walgreens drugstores. Please, I implore you, as a responsible podcaster, stop with the looting. It is idiotic, it's counterproductive, and tragically, it diverts from the true message that this moment demands. Because when you loot, let me say this, the service in the stores suck. You can never get the right size. It's like, excuse me, somebody, anybody, my shoe size is 10.5. Where are the 10.5s? And do you have leather jackets in double extra large? I mean, it's a nightmare when you loot. You can't get any help. God forbid there's a manufacturer defect. You are shit out of luck, because they don't refund returns for looted merchandise. And they don't give store credit to looters either. And if your looting preference is high-end electronics like headphones or Bluetooth speakers or iPads, they don't offer warranties or protection plans. So if you're having trouble with that iPad you just looted, guess what? You ain't getting an appointment at the Genius Bar. Forget about it. You're screwed. But if you still insist on looting, I say forget about the Nikes and the Air Jordans and those really cool wireless headphones. If you still insist on looting, I say change your mindset. Reinvent your image. Raise your game. Trash the sweatpants and throw away your floppy Laker trunks and start wearing pinstripe suits and solid cotton shirts with button-down collars with silk ties wound up in beautiful Windsor knots. Forget about baseball caps and Air Jordans and start thinking briefcases and wingtips. And while you're at it, get your ass in business school or law school or both, because I heard actually they offer joint programs. And then when you graduate and you still insist on looting, join a hedge fund or get a gig on Wall Street, or failing that, become a health insurance executive. Or if you can't hack it in insurance, try something easier like commercial real estate. And if you're too fucking dumb for that and go bankrupt like, well, you know who, why do what that imbecile brat boy did and run for fucking president. Because let me tell you, that's where the real money is. By that I mean the big dough, not the kind of dough you stuff in a cash register. I'm talking the kind of dough you stuff in offshore banks. I'm talking oligarch, Putin-style dough. I'm talking about tax dollars and defense contracts. I'm talking hardcore, non-negotiable commodities like tin and copper and aluminum. I'm talking equities and stock options and oil futures. I'm talking all manner of financial instruments designed to separate the poor working-class schmuck from his hard-earned cash. You really want to loot? Then take a lesson from the looter-in-chief. By that, I mean the billionaire brat boy. You know who I'm talking about. I mean that Bible-brandishing PVP. Yep, Putin's vice president. That dude has a PhD in looting, because that goofball has looted more dough from more folks. He's looted contractors and scammed tenants and conned employees and bilked more banks than you could shake a stick at. Christ, our looter-in-chief makes Don Corleone look like a choir boy. He makes tricky Dick Nixon look like goody two-shoes. Yep, folks, the way I see it, there is a very cruel irony at work here. Seems like the bigger the ripoff, the more loot you can grab, the less the penalty. You yank a pair of Vans off the shelves of Big Five, you get 4 years in the big house with a nice dose of COVID-19 for your troubles. You rip off billions, and guess what you get? 4 years of free federal housing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. What a system. Only in America. Of course, I realize it's all easier said than done. Getting to the top of any pyramid scam takes a little bit of luck, and it really helps if your daddy stakes you to a couple of mil before you're even potty trained, and it really, really helps if you get into all the top private schools with barely a C-minus GPA, and it also really, really, really helps if you don't have to get your ass shot in Vietnam, and it's also nice if, after you go bankrupt, a major TV network decides to make you a reality TV star for 10 years. Of course, there is no reality behind that kind of stardom. That kind of stardom is just a big fucking scam. But that's another story which deserves telling, but not just for this episode of this podcast. Okay, I'm getting into the weeds here. Where was I? Oh, yes, looting. I'll say this for the young street looters, not that they deserve defending, but unlike our looter-in-chief, at least our young street looters wear masks. They may destroy local businesses and set our economy back, but at least they're doing their part in stopping this frigging virus. Because any street looter worth his salt knows you gotta wear a mask. They wore them in 92 and back in 65. Hell, even those white boys in their Klan suits wore masks. Well, they're really hoods, but still, a hood can keep a virus away as well or even better than a mask. Come to think of it, even Butch Cassidy and Sundance wore masks. And I'm not talking about Redford and Newman. They were movie stars, and movie stars don't wear masks because the studios are paying millions of dollars so we can see their beautiful faces. But the real dudes, by that I mean the actual outlaws, Butch and Sundance, and for that matter, even Clyde and Bonnie. I'm not talking Warren and Faye, who are also both incredibly gorgeous human specimens. I'm talking the real folks. By every account, they wore masks, just so you know. But our very own looter-in-chief, not him. No way, not him. He won't wear a mask. He's what the epidemiologists call a super spreader. Quite possibly of COVID-19, but certainly and most assuredly of two other viruses that are doubly infectious and far more dangerous. By that I mean racism and ignorance. I think we'd all be safer if he was fitted not only for a mask, but also a muzzle. Then we'd all be better off for sure. So, folks, in an ever-expanding, socially distant universe nearly devoid of all matter, remember this. All matter matters, and especially now, more than ever, Black Lives Matter. Till next time, namaste, shalom, and aloha. Namashaloha.